Rain falls in silver sheets across the city, drowning neon lights in blurred streaks. Ethan Carter, early 30s, trudges alone, his gray jacket soaked through. He carries the weight of something unseen, eyes distant, steps uneven but determined. His reflection shivers in every puddle, fractured like his mind. Each corner he turns seems darker than the last, every shadow pressing closer. A low hum of traffic echoes behind, but he walks as though deaf to the world. His hands twitch at his sides, fingers brushing against wet fabric. The storm hides his tears, or perhaps becomes them. He pauses beneath a dying street lamp, light flickering against pale features, jaw clenched with memory. Raindrops cling to his lashes before falling, lost like promises. A whisper escapes his lips, barely audible above the rain. Not again. His breath clouds in the cold, dissipating into the void. The night seems endless, but he continues, guided not by hope but necessity. Ethan pushes open the door to his apartment, water dripping from his clothes onto worn floorboards. The silence greets him heavier than the rain. He pauses, staring at the table where an old shoebox waits, its edges frayed. His breathing steadies, then falters. Every corner of the room feels alive with memory. Every flicker of neon through blinds like a pulse reminding him of what he cannot forget. His hand hovers above the lid, but withdraws, trembling. He paces, circles tightening, then stops, eyes fixed on the box like prey facing a predator. Outside, the storm muffles the city, leaving only the sound of his breath and creaking wood. He whispers to himself, the words cracking, "It's still here." His body tightens as though bracing for impact. The room seems to lean in closer. Inside the courthouse lobby, Ethan sits on a worn wooden bench. Sunlight filters through tall windows, painting pale streaks across marble. He stares at the floor, knees bouncing with nervous rhythm, fists clenched tight. The murmur of voices swells around him, but feels far away, like sound underwater. His head lifts only briefly, eyes meeting the looming double doors, then drops again. He grips his knees, breath uneven. A bailiff passes, but Ethan doesn't move. His world narrows to the trembling in his hands and the pounding in his chest. The hallway hums with fluorescent light. Ethan paces outside the courtroom, footsteps sharp against the tiles. His shoulders hunch, head down, fingers brushing the wall for balance. He stops, presses palms against thighs, then resumes walking. The rhythm is restless, trapped. His breath catches, rises, falls again. Every sound magnifies. The buzz of lights, the scrape of his shoes, the pounding of his pulse. He closes his eyes briefly, whispers something inaudible, then forces himself forward. On the witness stand, Ethan sits rigid. His hands grip the edge of the chair until knuckles turn white. Sweat beads along his temple. He looks out, but the faces blur into shadow. His voice trembles as he speaks, every word heavier than the last. He leans forward slightly, throat tightening, chest rising sharply. His jaw stiffens, teeth grinding together in silence between sentences. He forces each phrase out like dragging chains, his body taut with restraint. The courtroom listens, faceless and silent. The cafe was quiet, rain tapping softly on the windows, as Ethan sat opposite Claire Morgan, the warm comforter. She radiated calm, her soft smile steady, even as his world unraveled. "They'll see the truth," she said, her voice soothing like a melody. Ethan stirred his coffee but never drank, staring at the dark swirl as though it could swallow his despair. The guarded survivor in him studied her face, searching for cracks in the kindness. Her hand brushed his lightly, grounding him, yet something in her eyes carried a shadow, a cost hidden beneath warmth. "You need people to believe you," Claire added, her tone gentle but firm. Ethan's throat tightened as he whispered, "No one wants to." Outside, headlights cut across the glass, streaks of cold light, flashing like accusations. Claire leaned closer, her words barely above a whisper, "Then we'll make them." The next day, Ethan walked through the narrow alley where Jordan Hayes, the reluctant fire starter, lingered with restless energy. 16. Wiry, eyes sharp. He looked like he carried secrets too heavy for his age. I know what they did, Jordan snapped, tossing a pebble at the wall. Ethan's voice was low, wary. Why tell me now? Jordan smirked, hiding fear behind defiance. Because they'll bury me too if I don't. The guarded survivor inside Ethan hesitated. Every instinct warned him to be cautious. Yet Jordan's words cut with raw urgency, stirring hope he'd thought lost. The boy leaned in, whispering, I saw who set you up. Ethan's heart stuttered, his pulse rushing in his ears. The alley smelled of damp brick and gasoline, the air charged with secrets that could burn everything. That night, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, the shoebox still hidden beneath the bed, the letter untouched. He traced escape routes again, every exit memorized, as though fleeing could undo the chains of accusation. The guarded survivor clung to ritual, but every shadow seemed to whisper betrayal. On the wall, the photo of the lingering memory glowed faintly in lamplight, the smile forever young, frozen, and haunting. Ethan whispered, I can't carry this anymore. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. Coffee sat cold, untouched as always, the mug a symbol of unfinished life. Outside, thunder cracked, rain slashing against glass, mirroring the storm within. The city moved on indifferently, while Ethan's world stood still, a man caged by silence and ghosts. Marcus Doyle, the steady anchor, sat across from Ethan in the corner booth of a rundown diner. Solid, mid-30s, dependable presence, his calm steadiness contrasted Ethan's fraying edges. He slid a cup of coffee across, saying, You're not alone. Ethan's eyes searched his face, half believing, half fearing. Marcus leaned back, arms folded, his loyalty steady but hiding fractures unseen. I'll stand with you, Marcus said, his voice resolute, but his gaze drifted toward the door, as if already preparing to leave, if it came to that. The guarded survivor in Ethan took note, trust strained thin. The hum of the neon sign buzzed above, casting flickers of light across chipped counters. Ethan whispered, I don't know who to trust anymore. Marcus exhaled, his silence saying more than words could. In a shadowed office lined with books and polished wood, Evelyn Sharp, the velvet blade, waited. Late 40s, elegant, poised, she moved with deliberate grace as Ethan entered. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice smooth as glass, her gaze unwavering. Ethan felt the weight of her presence, a collector of debts and secrets. You're caught in a story already written, she murmured, fingers brushing a spotless desk. The guarded survivor inside Ethan recoiled, sensing the quiet power she wielded like a blade. Why me? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Evelyn paused, her silence sharpened into menace before answering, because truth bends to those who can hold it. Her eyes never blinked, steady and controlling. Ethan stood in the glow of her calm, feeling smaller with each breath, as though she rewrote reality with nothing but her will. The evidence table glowed under the harsh fluorescent light, folders stacked high, photographs scattered like shattered glass. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes locking on a single page that could clear his name. His attorney whispered, This is it? But as Ethan reached for it, the paper vanished, swept away by a clerk with expressionless efficiency. Panic surged through him. Where's it going? Ethan asked, his voice cracking with urgency. The guarded survivor within him knew this wasn't chance but design. Claire Morgan, the warm comforter, stood nearby, her gentle face unreadable. She murmured, These things get misplaced, but her eyes lingered too long. Ethan's pulse raced. Every detail felt orchestrated, every move against him. Outside, storm clouds rolled in, rain hammering glass as if echoing his fear. He realized in that moment the system was not just broken, it was working against him. Later that evening, Ethan sat across from Marcus Doyle in the dim diner, steam rising from untouched cups. They're erasing the truth, Ethan said, his voice hoarse with anger. Marcus exhaled slowly, his steady gaze heavy with thought. We'll find another way, he replied. But Ethan noticed the flicker in his eyes, the hesitation that betrayed unspoken doubts. The guarded survivor catalogued it instantly, filing it as another fracture in the fragile trust. A television above the counter flashed breaking news, Ethan's name plastered beneath the word, "convicted." The room buzzed with whispers, strangers glancing their way. Marcus placed a hand on the table, his tone calm. "Stay grounded. Rage will destroy you before they do." Ethan stared at him, wondering if those words were loyalty or warning. The neon outside flickered red, casting blood-like reflections across the glass. The alley was damp, graffiti covering brick walls, and Jordan Hayes paced in restless circles, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. "They're watching me too," Jordan snapped, his young voice hard but trembling beneath defiance. Ethan stood still, studying the boy's darting eyes. "Tell me what you know," he demanded, though his tone carried more desperation than command. Jordan stopped, fists clenched. "I saw him. Marcus wasn't where he said he was. He lied." The words hit Ethan like a blow, the world tilting beneath his feet. The reluctant fire starter's fire burned sharp, reckless, yet it carried the spark of truth. Ethan whispered, "You're sure?" Jordan nodded, eyes fierce. The guarded survivor inside Ethan screamed to be careful, yet hope clawed at his chest. Rain fell harder, water running down walls like veins of truth breaking through lies. Back in her apartment, Claire Morgan poured 2 glasses of wine, her warm smile steady as Ethan sat opposite, uneasy. "You can't lose yourself," she said, voice smooth, her hand grazing his arm. Ethan's breath caught, his eyes narrowing as trust wrestled suspicion. The guarded survivor measured every movement, every glance, every pause. Claire leaned closer, her tone soft, "You need me to keep you steady." Ethan looked away, the photo of her family on the shelf catching his eye, framed in perfect order, too perfect. His chest tightened. "Why do you care so much?" he whispered. Claire's smile froze for a moment before she said, "Because I don't want to see you fall." The room smelled of lavender, the calm suffocating, like silk wrapping into a noose. Ethan felt trapped in comfort that threatened to consume him. Ethan stood at the window of his apartment, rain streaking down glass, city lights blurred in distorted colors. The guarded survivor inside him whispered of escape. But he felt the noose tightening. Every ally seemed stained, every truth shifting into shadow. He pressed his forehead to the glass, whispering, "I can't keep fighting ghosts." Behind him, the shoebox sat half-hidden, its sealed letter like a heartbeat in the dark. Thunder cracked, rattling the room as if the world mocked his despair. He thought of Jordan's words, Marcus' hesitation, Claire's carefully crafted care, Evelyn's cold certainty. They formed a web around him, invisible threads binding tighter with every hour. "Who's the enemy?" Ethan asked the night, but only rain answered. His reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, a man on the edge of breaking. The courthouse basement smelled of mildew and secrets, the dim bulbs flickering as Ethan flipped open an old archive folder. Inside was a deposition, yellowed by time, signed by a key witness who had once claimed loyalty to the truth. His eyes widened as he read about past lies. This witness had perjured themselves before, their history of deceit buried in forgotten files. The guarded survivor within Ethan trembled, knowing this document could unravel the entire case. "They built it on rotten wood," he whispered, his voice shaky yet fierce. He could almost hear the chains creak under the weight of falsehoods. Footsteps echoed faintly above, reminding him of the risk in even holding the pages. Ethan clutched the folder tight, realizing this was not just evidence, it was betrayal long concealed, the foundation of his downfall hidden in plain sight. Later that night, Ethan confronted Marcus Doyle in the diner, sliding the old deposition across the table. "He lied," Ethan said, voice sharp with desperation. Marcus looked at the paper, his jaw tightening as if the words were knives. "Be careful where you take this," Marcus muttered, his calm tone too controlled, too heavy. Ethan studied his face, watching for cracks, the guarded survivor alive with suspicion. Marcus took a long sip of coffee, then added, "Sometimes the greater good demands sacrifice." Ethan's chest burned at the words. Sacrifice me, you mean? His voice broke, louder than he wanted. A few patrons turned to look. Marcus leaned closer, his eyes steady but colder than before. You don't know everything, Ethan. The betrayal seeped not in action but in tone, a quiet fracture splitting loyalty in two. The next morning, Jordan Hayes cornered Ethan in a deserted lot, his restless eyes darting toward shadows. Marcus isn't who you think, Jordan blurted, his voice edged with panic. Ethan stepped closer, his tone demanding. Tell me everything. Jordan clenched his fists, spitting the truth fast, afraid it might vanish if he slowed. He was with them the night they framed you. I saw him. He's not on your side. Ethan staggered back, the words like a blade to the spine. The guarded survivor inside screamed for him to run, yet his feet rooted to the spot. Jordan's breath came fast, his youth straining under the weight of knowledge he shouldn't carry. You trust the wrong man, Jordan whispered. The lot was silent, except for the sound of rain dripping from rusted pipes, each drop striking like a verdict. In her office, Evelyn Sharp sat poised at her spotless desk, the velvet blade cloaked in calm authority. Ethan entered, his steps uncertain but resolute, clutching the deposition like a lifeline. Evelyn's eyes followed him unblinking, as though she could rewrite his every move before he made it. You're chasing shadows, she said, her voice smooth as silk, each word honed to cut. Ethan's throat tightened as he placed the paper down, whispering, This is proof. Evelyn smiled faintly, tilting her head. Proof bends. It is never as solid as you think. The guarded survivor in Ethan recoiled at her calm control, sensing the quiet storm she carried. The silence thickened, broken only by the hum of her perfectly ordered office. He realized then she was not a player in this story. She was the one orchestrating its design. That night, alone in his apartment, Ethan stared at the photograph of the lingering memory pinned on the wall. The smile was eternal, frozen, but the truth behind it shifted in his mind. He whispered, What if you knew? The guarded survivor inside him realized that the memory he clung to might have been rewritten by grief, reshaped into something less than true. A chill passed through him as the shoebox under his bed seemed to pulse with secrets unsaid. He remembered Evelyn's words, proof bends, and wondered if even the ghost he carried had been by time. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating his hollow reflection in the glass. Ethan pressed his hand to the window, whispering, Tell me what's real. Only silence answered, the kind that wraps around truth until it suffocates. The courtroom brimmed with tension, the jury's eyes fixed on Ethan as he stood to testify. His voice trembled at first, then sharpened. I've been condemned by lies, he declared, the words echoing like a plea and an accusation. Claire Morgan watched from the gallery, her expression calm yet unreadable, her soft nod urging him forward. Marcus Doyle sat near the prosecution, his face stiff with loyalty divided, a silent wall between past promises and present betrayal. Ethan's hands gripped the wooden rails so tight his knuckles whitened. The guarded survivor within him pushed through fear, demanding to be heard. The truth was buried, the evidence stolen, he continued, his voice breaking yet rising above murmurs. Reporters scribbled, flashes sparked, capturing a man clawing at justice. The gavel hovered, but this time Ethan's voice struck harder than wood. Later, in a quiet chamber, Claire leaned close to Ethan, her voice gentle as silk. You're strong, she whispered, brushing his hand, her touch both comfort and control. Ethan's eyes flicked toward her, suspicion battling with gratitude. Why are you really here? He asked, his tone low. The guarded survivor inside him recoiled, sensing the weight beneath her kindness. Claire smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering like glass hiding cracks. Because I can't let you fall, she murmured, though her words lingered like a snare. Ethan's throat tightened, silence pressing heavy between them. The room smelled of stale coffee and dust, yet her perfume lingered sharp. You. If you know something, tell me, Ethan demanded, his voice breaking. Claire exhaled slowly, her hand tightening for just a second before she let go, a flicker of truth slipping through her mask. In the courthouse hallway, Ethan pressed his palms against cold marble, his body trembling from exhaustion. Marcus approached, steady steps echoing like judgment. "You shouldn't have pushed so hard," Marcus said, voice calm but edged. Ethan turned, eyes raw with betrayal. "You were there. You lied," he accused, his voice cutting like broken glass. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his gaze didn't falter. "I did what I had to," he said, his tone carrying weight of choices chained to regret. The guarded survivor inside Ethan screamed, demanding answers. "You chose them over me," Ethan whispered, pain carving his words into stone. Marcus exhaled, silence confirming what truth could not. The hallway lights flickered, shadows stretching long like bars of a cage. Ethan stood frozen, the foundation of trust shattering in a single glance. Outside the courthouse, under gray skies, Jordan Hayes appeared suddenly, his hoodie damp with rain, eyes burning with urgency. "They'll bury this unless you act now," he hissed, thrusting a crumpled paper into Ethan's hand. Ethan unfolded it, his breath catching at the words, details pointing to Evelyn Sharp, her name inked like poison. "She's the one," Jordan whispered, his young voice trembling with both fear and fire. The guarded survivor in Ethan felt both dread and clarity, the looming figure finally named. Ethan's eyes lifted toward the courthouse steps, the weight of the revelation pressing hard against him. Rain poured harder, streaking his face like tears he refused to shed. Jordan pulled his hood lower, muttering, "They'll come for me too." The storm outside mirrored the storm within, truth striking like lightning in the dark. That night, in her immaculate office, Evelyn Sharp stood tall, her silhouette framed by golden lamplight. Ethan entered, soaked, the crumpled paper clenched in his hand. "You orchestrated it all," he said, his voice breaking but resolute. Evelyn's gaze never wavered, her composure unshaken. "Truth is a weapon," she replied, her tone smooth, calculated. Ethan stepped closer, fists trembling, the guarded survivor demanding release. "You destroyed my life," he whispered, his eyes hollow yet blazing. Evelyn tilted her head slightly, her smile faint, chilling. "I only revealed who you were to them," she said. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, the room's order mocking his chaos. Thunder rolled outside, shadows slicing across polished wood. Ethan felt the world tilt, the final wall of control standing before him. It was not just betrayal, it was war cloaked in civility. The verdict fell heavy, the courtroom divided between gasps and silence. Ethan sat motionless as the words rang out, case dismissed due to lack of credible evidence. Relief and rage collided inside him, leaving only emptiness. The guarded survivor within whispered that freedom was hollow when justice had been twisted. Cameras flashed, capturing his weary face, not of triumph but of scars. Claire Morgan watched from the gallery, her smile faint but unreadable, as if she knew this resolution cost more than it gave. Marcus Doyle stood in the back, his gaze lowered, his loyalty already in ashes. Evelyn Sharp remained absent, her shadow stretching even in victory denied. Ethan whispered, "They didn't clear me, they just stopped fighting me." The gavel struck again, sealing not vindication but a scar carved deeper, an ending without closure. After the verdict, Claire approached Ethan in the hallway, her calm presence radiating as always. She touched his arm lightly, her voice soft. "You're free now. Isn't that enough?" Ethan stared at her, his eyes hollow, searching for truth beneath her warmth. "Free?" he echoed, his tone bitter. "They branded me, Claire. I'll never be free." Her smile faltered for the first time, a flicker of something darker crossing her face. She whispered, "Sometimes survival is the only justice we get." The guarded survivor inside Ethan recoiled, recognizing the weight of compromise hidden in her words. He pulled back, breaking her touch, his trust fractured beyond repair. The hallway buzzed with chatter from reporters, but Ethan only heard the echo of her whisper, a truth that was both comforting and suffocating. Marcus found Ethan later that evening outside the courthouse, rain misting down in silver sheets. He stood by his car, his expression heavy with regret. I didn't want it to end like this, Marcus said quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice sharp. You betrayed me, Marcus. Marcus looked away, his silence louder than excuses. I thought I was protecting something bigger, he finally muttered. The guarded survivor within Ethan registered the confession as both truth and wound, a reminder that loyalty bends when tested. Ethan whispered, You chose them. Marcus nodded faintly, his face unreadable under streetlight glow. The rain fell harder, blurring their outlines as if washing away the remnants of trust. They stood divided by silence, both men chained to choices that could not be undone. Back in his apartment, Ethan pulled out the shoebox from under his bed, hands trembling as he lifted the sealed letter. For years it had remained untouched, a relic of pain he couldn't face. Tonight, under stormlight flickering through blinds, he ripped it open. The words spilled like ghosts, confessions from the one he had lost, the lingering memory explaining choices, revealing pain he never saw. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered, You were never gone. You were drowning too. The guarded survivor within him cracked, grief and truth colliding in a wound that finally opened. He pressed the letter to his chest, sobbing quietly in the silence. Outside, the storm raged, but within the room, a fragile clarity began to take shape, painful, yet undeniable. As dawn broke, Ethan stood on the rooftop, the city bathed in pale light after the storm. He held the letter in his hand, the ink smudged by rain and tears. You carried me this far, he whispered to the memory of the one he had lost. The guarded survivor inside him felt the weight shift, not gone, but lighter. Claire's comfort, Marcus's betrayal, Evelyn's control, all blurred into lessons carved deep into his skin. Justice had not been served, but truth had been unearthed in fragments, enough to reshape him. He breathed in the cold morning air, steady for the first time in years. His reflection in a rooftop puddle stared back, not hollow but scarred, still alive. I will carry this, Ethan whispered. The city stirred awake, indifferent, but for him, the silence was no longer empty. The courtroom was long emptied, yet Ethan sat alone in the back row, the silence louder than any verdict. Dust motes floated in shafts of weak morning light, settling on benches carved with years of grief. His hands rested limp in his lap, the letter folded neatly inside his pocket. He whispered, I walked free, but I am not unchained. The guarded survivor within him felt both heavier and lighter, scarred but enduring. The gavel that had once shattered his life now rested silent, its echo gone. He looked at the empty witness stand where truth had fought but never triumphed. His chest rose slowly, as though drawing breath required permission. The silence pressed close, but it was no longer suffocating. It was witness, not enemy. For the first time, Ethan sat with the weight and did not collapse beneath it. That afternoon, Ethan walked through the park where laughter once lived. Families moved past him, their joy untouched by shadows. He paused by the bench where he and the lingering memory once sat, the ghost of youth frozen in fragments. The photograph from his wall remained burned into his mind, the smile never fading, though truth had reshaped it. He whispered, You haunt me still, the words trembling between grief and love. The guarded survivor traced the wood of the bench with his fingers, grounding himself in the present. Around him children played, their voices sharp and alive, reminders of what endures despite loss. He stood slowly, leaving the past in place, but carrying its weight forward. His reflection in the park's pond rippled, fractured yet unbroken. Night fell heavy, and Ethan sat in his apartment, the letter unfolded on the table beside a half-empty glass of water. He read the words again, the confessions written years ago, truths carried too long. I didn't leave you, I was drowning. The lingering memory had written, words etched like wounds. Tears blurred his sight, but he let them come this time, not fighting the flood. The guarded survivor within him allowed grief to flow, not as a weakness but as release. His lips trembled as he whispered, I forgive you. The walls that had once closed in felt wider, as though shadows had loosened their grip. The apartment hummed with quiet, Not emptiness, but presence. For the first time, the silence did not feel like punishment. It felt like survival. Ethan returned to the courthouse steps, standing where the storm had once soaked him. The city lights flickered awake, cars rushing past, life moving indifferent to scars. He looked upward at the stone pillars, monuments of justice both served and denied. His fists clenched, not in rage but in resolve. "They cannot erase me," he said quietly, his voice steady at last. The guarded survivor inside him felt the shift, the chains still present but no longer binding him. Passers-by glanced briefly, not recognizing the man once branded. He exhaled, shoulders easing, not in triumph but acceptance. The courthouse loomed above, still powerful, still flawed, but Ethan turned his back to it, walking into the night with steps that carried weight, yet no longer dragged. Alone in his apartment, Ethan stood at the window, city lights blinking like scattered stars. His reflection stared back, scarred but enduring. He whispered, "They took everything, but I'm still here." The guarded survivor within him settled into silence, no longer bracing for collapse. The shoebox remained under the bed, the letter folded inside, not as a weight, but as a reminder. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, the world's chaos marching on. Ethan pressed his hand against the glass, his breath fogging the cold pain. The lingering memory lingered, not as torment, but as a quiet truth, reshaped into something he could carry. The night hummed with unanswered questions, yet one truth remained unshaken. Survival itself was defiance. His last whispered words echoed, "The truth never dies. It waits."